Well, it's David Thornburgh, President and CEO of the Committee 70, back with you again from our studio C70, where all day here on Election Day we've been talking to movers and shakers and people who make the news and people who cover the news on all things politics here in Philadelphia. My guest right now is a mainstay of Philadelphia politics and Philadelphia reporting, Vincent Thompson from WURD. Vincent,
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, David. I'm impressed by the little tiny studio. I'm impressed.
Well, you get a lot of mileage out of a little bit these days.
I'm learning.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do the same thing. It's impressive.
But we're going to talk to Vincent about what he's seen and what he's heard around Philadelphia here on Election Day. Vincent's been covering. We were just talking. Been covering mayoral elections for 30-some years.
Yes,
now,
right. I started as a college kid. I'm born and raised in Philly.
Yeah.
I'm a native Philadelphian, 52 years old.
Yeah.
I started covering politics in my 20s at Temple University.
Yep.
Ironically, I covered city council in my 20s for then Temple University's radio station, WRTI. And now full circle, I'm the host of the Philadelphia City Council live show on WURD Radio every Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So if people don't want to come down to City Hall, you can listen to it on the radio. I like to say I'm the Harry Callis of City Council. And I'm the 19th councilor. I do the play-by-play. That's exactly what I do. Yeah. And yeah, it's fun. I've been doing that for 5 years now.
That's great. Well, I get to turn the table on Vincent.
Yes, I do. Yes, you do.
Because I usually show a number of times.
I usually talk to you.
Credit to you. You're very knowledgeable and very thorough.
Thank you, Dave.
So
I appreciate
your good work, and I know it helps people sort of make sense of this craziness.
Yeah. And it's not that hard. You know, I tell people, I think people think politics is harder than it actually is. Yeah. You know, if you take the time to understand, study the issues, study the candidates, and learn that they're people, I think it goes a long way.
More than one person has observed it's a people business.
It is. Oh, yeah.
And politicians, elected officials, people in government, if they connect with people, this job looks easy.
I tell people there's a politic to covering politics.
Yep.
Right? You got to be political with the 17 members of council, with the people that you're covering. Understand sometimes that, you know, I'm hard on all of them. I tell people I'm an equal opportunity pain in the butt. No matter what ethnic group or their thing.
That's the job of the fourth estate.
That is.
So let's start with sort of the big picture.
Okay.
We'll not dive into the election today,
Sure.
but where is Philadelphia right now, you know, May 21st, 2019? What are the sort of big atmospheric conditions that are out there that ultimately get translated into these races and the conversations? Like, what do you hear? What do you see? What's on people's minds?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. For folks that don't know, WURD Radio, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, we're the only African American talk radio station in Pennsylvania, one of the few in the country, and 46 to 47% of the city's population is African American. So if it's happening in the African American community, we're hearing about it on WURD Radio. And in a city of Philadelphia where the overwhelming population is African American, I really believe at this time we have a tale of two cities, right? There's parts of the city that are really doing well, Center City, folks that have benefited from the 10-year tax abatement, and other neighborhoods that are doing well through gentrification. Some of those same gentrifying neighborhoods have also displaced people of color. Also, there's the issue of crime and violence. Philadelphia has a huge murder rate. And there's just poverty, right? We're at 26% poverty rate.
It's been that way.
And it's been that way for a while.
For decades.
Right, for decades. But, you know, if you don't move that needle, I don't think that you move the city. Because, you know, one of the things I like to say about Philadelphia is a city of neighborhoods. But because it's a city of neighborhoods, every neighborhood is like their own island within itself. So, you know, and they only look at their island, right? So if you live in Kensington, you're worried about Kensington. You don't really care what's in Center City or in North Philly or in Center City. So if we don't deal with that issue long term, I think that's going to be a problem. So no matter what happens today with City Council, I think dealing with some of those long-term structural issues and the feelings of some folks of color, Latinos, African Americans, who feel that Philadelphia isn't benefiting them, even though they have been around when Philadelphia wasn't great, that's something that's going to be long-term.
So here's a question I'm sure, to the extent that Mayor Kenney or any of the candidates have done citywide polling. Here's a question that always shows up. Compared to 4 years ago, better off, worse off, about the same? I mean, this again is based on the folks that you interact with, talk with, hear from on the radio?
I think for some people, it depends on which category you think,
Yeah.
right? So if you're someone who has a kid in pre-K, the new pre-K program,
better
you think
off.
things are better off.
Yeah.
If you're a person who has been the victim of stop and frisk, the policy of stopping you, on suspicion, you might not do well. If you're somebody who's listening to the numbers that are coming out of the unemployment rate and saying things are lower, but you don't see it in your paycheck, you might think that you're not better off. So I think a lot of that is dependent upon where you're at. One of the things I think that Ed Rendell was able to do as mayor is he made people feel good about the city.
Yeah.
So sometimes even when you weren't better off, if you feel better off, then you're better off.
There's
right.
perception and reality.
Yeah, that's right.
So the other question that often shows up in polls is looking forward. Do you think hopeful, pessimistic, optimistic?
I would think
somewhere in between.
I think somewhere in between.
Yeah.
I think, once again, depending upon where you're at, it's optimistic. Depending upon where you're at, you could be pessimistic. I think the big issue that we really have to deal with, and the Pew Charitable Trust says it in studies and others, is frankly, you got to deal with this perception of Philly being two separate cities.
Yeah.
Right? And if you don't deal with that issue long term, I don't think, and I really think that's an issue for council to deal with.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if the state can come down with a white horse and bags of money and suddenly change it. If you don't, because one thing I'd like to say, David, and most people don't realize this, Philadelphia has a high illiteracy rate.
Yeah.
So people can't be ready for the jobs of the future if they can't read.
Yeah.
And 1 out of every 3 people in our city, 500,000 people, don't read at grade level.
Right.
That's a problem for a major city.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm interested, my commentary is there's not, in this campaign, not a whole lot of talk about jobs and economic opportunity, which you would think, given the poverty rate, and some underlying fundamental issues like you talked about, literacy and so forth and so on, there would be. So
I think there's been some. There's been some, but the question is, how much really can a mayor do to move that needle, right? And I think one thing I've always said, David, is that sometimes cities, no matter who's the mayor, who's the council people, have to say, we are committed to funding education, right? No matter what. We're committed to doing X program over X amount of years. One of the problems sometimes with government is one mayor has a belief and does it for 8 years. And then the next mayor will say, I didn't like that policy, I'm going to do something different. So like great momentum can kind of get stopped through just, I didn't like the policy, or sometimes in Philadelphia it gets stopped by ego and politics.
That's right. That was not my idea, so we're not doing that anymore. We're doing my thing.
Right.
And then you get caught up in you got a program for everything, and you lose the
politicians with ego. Qu'est-ce que c'est? I'm stunned by that. I'm stunned.
I've seen a few.
I'm stunned. You got to have a good ego to run.
So I ask those kind of atmospheric questions because ultimately that's what helps a candidate craft their message. And then that's a message they're trying to deliver in their GOTV operation in the field, and door knocking and so forth and so on. But they sort of start with the atmospheric conditions. So, but it also, we were talking about earlier, it looks like. Now, I like to be optimistic about these things.
Yes.
It looks like turnout's going to be kind of like.
You are definitely a glass half empty guy.
A glass half full.
A glass half full.
Yes,
you are right.
I'm
just a glass. I'm just a glass guy.
The thing is, I do think it's all about expectations.
Right.
If I consistently say I think turnout's going to be, better than average or whatever, then somebody hears that and say well, I probably should get out there.
Now how I base my stuff when I speak to David. I'll give you a little trick of the trade. I usually have talked to the Philadelphia City Commissioners and the Pennsylvania Department of State, and they give me kind of their assessment.
Right.
And then I ask you, because I know that the Committee of 70 has a history of knowing what's going on. So I would love for us to be back in the days of Wilson Good, when it was like 80, 90%.
Well,
there was excitement and energy.
Right. You go way back into the 50s.
Oh,
where just reading about and seeing the old clips and so forth, like the energy around, even like a controller's race, or a DA's
people
race,
loved it.
It was like every.
It was a rock star.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was a rock star. It was a rock. Well, you know what?
I'm not sure we're going to get there,
but let's tell people a little bit of also interesting history. People don't realize that before 1952, charter change of 51, every mayor was a Republican.
Oh yeah.
And then
for
right
100 years.
100 years, and then
More than
after
that, I don't know.
1952 to today, every mayor has been a Democrat, and that's why when a lot of people are talking about this mayor's race between Senator Anthony Williams, City Controller Alan Buckovich, and incumbent Mayor Jim Kenney. Well, Vincent, why do you think that the mayor is a front runner to win re-election? I'm just basing it on history, right? There's been no incumbent mayor in Philadelphia who has run for re-election that has lost re-election. And we've had a few mayors in recent years that have done some questionable things and have won re-election.
Well, I was remembering my first mayoral election after we moved to Philadelphia was 1987, which was, Wilson Good and Frank Rizzo after move.
Right.
And as I recall, that was a narrow margin.
That's true, right.
Maybe the second closest to the 1999 John Street Sam Katz race.
Yes.
So they can. So it's probably only if something really dramatic
Right.
and probably bad happens
Right.
to an incumbent mayor does the race tighten.
Right.
Like that.
And that's
So-
why I'm saying to people, if they're watching,
Yeah.
I still urge you to vote. You know, you still got 3 hours to vote.
Yeah, plenty of time.
in
And
right.
by the way, this is the nicest day you're going to get in May.
This is
so
very nice.
You have no excuse.
It's a beautiful day. It's been a great day to pound the paper.
Yeah.
It's been a funny day.
So there's going to be lots of theories going around about, once we see the results, certainly not only about turnout, but about, who wins, who loses, who benefits from all the above. But what have you seen today? You've talked to folks. You were over at Relish in the Northwest.
I bought you some
talking
food
to
if you want some.
candidates.
Some
Okay,
great
no,
food. Some great
I'm
food.
fine. They do have
They
good
do have
food there.
fantastic
Yeah,
food,
yeah,
right.
yeah. So what's a couple of 3 takeaways, things that you've seen out there that made you think like, oh, that's an interesting little nugget.
Well, let me tell you what's been interesting. Luckily, this morning I had a chance to do a 1-hour special show of The Political Source, which when I'm not doing City Council Live, we call the show The Political Source. And I had a chance to speak to Alan Buckovich on the radio, and I had a chance to speak to Anthony Williams on the radio. And they're still confident of victory. They should be. They're candidates that are running. But the thing that struck me was Alan Buckovich said that he thinks whoever gets 90,000 votes for mayor is probably going to be the person that wins. So in any mayor's race, it's like a city council at large race. It's like a menu. Got to pick some from. It's a puzzle, yeah.
Gotta
But
put the pieces
that's right.
together
Something
to add
from
up
the
to
Northeast,
90.
something from Kensington, something from South Philly. So I think probably the one candidate that would have that ability to piece things together with their money, their get out the vote efforts, would probably be Jim Kenney. But as they say in sports, that's why they play the game, right? We don't know. But the fact that Alan Buckovich said that only 90,000 people would be needed to win, that's lower than Jim Kenney won in 2015, because he got like 115,000, 116,000. So that was one. The second thing that is surprising me is, normally it's not rare for ballots to be cut all over the city, right? And deals
And
to
by
be
cut, just so folks understand.
Right. Cut means, the Democratic City official ballot could have 5 names. And in this ward or in that division, they could have their own separate ballot, which they hand out to you to do to vote for whomever. If I can, I'm just going to go off camera for a second. There happens to be one ballot that I picked up, and it is from Curtis Jones, who's in the 4th Councilmanic District, and he is running in an election. He has an opponent as well, but he has his own official ballot. And in the African American community, a lot of people have been saying, get rid of Jim Kenney. He's been a bad mayor. Well, Curtis Jones is supporting Jim Kenney for mayor. And among the council at large races, only one incumbent, Derek Green, has been endorsed. So this is a sitting council person who is cutting members of his own council that he has to sit next to, and will meet with them this coming Thursday, no matter the outcome of the election. So I've seen a lot of that throughout the city. So that's number 2.
The level of intrigue that goes on around sample ballots is really astounding.
And I think that's the second thing that I've seen. And then the third, and I think it's really good for the city, is a lot of different folks have run for council at large. A lot of millennials have run, so there's a possibility we might have a millennial or even 2 on city council when this night is done. There's a possibility of also a lot more people, Latinos, have run for more. I think there's like 4 or 5 Latinos that are running in the city council at large, which is a huge number. I've had the privilege of being the city council chief of staff for Councilman Juan Ramos. So there's only been 3 Latinos who have been on city council: Angel Ortiz, Juan Ramos, and Maria Quinones Sanchez, who is running in the 7th district.
Right.
So I think seeing that change is good for the city.
Yeah.
Good for democracy.
Some of you, or if you're watching this, you may have watched some of the Facebook Live interviews we did with, I think, 18 of the 28 at-large candidates.
You might have been one of the few people who speak to all those people.
But,
I'm a political reporter and haven't spoken to that many of the candidates.
But we did them all in one day, believe it or not. It was something. Pretty exhausting.
But you know,
it's good.
But you know, it shows that there's a depth and breadth of different people, from folks who are scientists to folks who it's been a really interesting mix.
Yeah, the question is going to be how many of those folks either do much better than expected, or even, you know, kind of in a Hail Mary break through and actually win.
You know, like, and I think one of those people is Isaiah Thomas. If anybody of the current, this is 3rd time, and he's hoping that the 3rd time's a charm.
Yeah.
So
I said that to him when I was talking to him, and he picked right. That's like he said, that's my thing.
That's right. That's what he's hoping for, and he's gotten a lot of support. So I urge people to vote for whomever you want for city council at large. But you know, you're going to have some interesting people running.
Well, you know, I've said to people, Committee 70 has been around 115 years, and we've always believed in the power of competition.
Yeah, you look good for 115.
Yeah, well, I feel
you look no older than 85. I can tell you that.
14.
That's right.
But you know, political competition is good. So, you know, in our view, like if you have a political system that allows first-time candidates a fighting shot, right? Which is tough because, you know, once you get in office, your job is to stay in office, right? And do everything you can to keep people out.
What's the number one thing of an incumbent is to go for a second term. Like that's the number one thing for an incumbent. But like you hope that people run, have an experience, stay in the office. And Philadelphia is a town where you got to lose a couple of times to win. Like Everendell is a classic example of that.
Well, I mean, people forget. We were talking about the 1991 mayor's race.
Right.
If he hadn't won that, it might have been over for him.
That's true.
Because he had not been all that successful. He ran for governor.
Ran for governor?
Yeah.
He was DA?
Yeah.
And then he left and ran for governor. So he had taken a couple of. He ran for mayor at one point before he actually won. So in Philly, sometimes you got to run a couple of times before you win.
Yeah. A couple of marquee.
Don't mortgage your house though. That's another thing. Because it costs a lot to run.
And we could talk about the judges' races where I'm afraid.
Well, they're mortgaging their soul. Let's change that. They're mortgaging their soul.
Their house and their soul.
That's right.
Yeah. There's just a couple of sort of featured races or marquee races that people ought to pay attention to, which when we see the results, we'll know which way is the wind blowing.
Okay.
So what would you earmark a couple races?
Sure, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to say the mayor's race, obviously, because it's an important race. The city council at large on the Democratic side.
No, but I mean, okay.
Okay, city council at large on the Democratic side. Any of the district races that are having challenges, there's like 5 of the 10 that's having a challenge.
Highlight a couple of those that are maybe would have a biggest
let me
aftershock if.
I think the one would be Janie Blackwell, Jamie Gutierrez in the 3rd councilmanic district, and also the 7th district as well, which is Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez, the incumbent against State Representative Angel Cruz. They don't like each other. That's always been a feuding area, so that could be a changing of the guard. And also the sheriff's race. Sheriff Jewel Williams is being challenged by 3 others. He has faced allegations of sexual harassment.
Allegations that the city settled.
One
suspects there was something to those.
Yeah, well, let me say this. The sheriff says that he is innocent of everything, and as a reporter, I'd like to give one side of the story, that he is innocent of all things. Yeah. But I think I would be interested to see if the citizens today say, we'd like to keep Jewel Williams, or they throw him out. And we don't know what's going to happen with Jewel Williams down the line because there's still investigations of the sheriff's office. Now, I'm not saying on this Facebook Live that the sheriff is accused of anything, but investigations still continue, and we never know what might happen.
So another question in terms of kind of revelations or maybe even bombshells during the campaign. You know, when the news about the local 98 indictments came out, which was March, maybe.
Yes.
Uh,
I still have the indictment in now.
yeah.
That shows you how much
First
of a
of
geek I am.
all, maybe the conventional wisdom at that time is this might be a game changer, not only for Councilman Bobby Heenan,
Right. Who is running unopposed.
Right? Well, that's what
Who's
I was
running
gonna say.
unopposed, so it's not a game changer to Bobby.
Yeah.
Heenan.
So I'm just curious, like, what happened there? Why was that not more of
I think
an issue?
I think the candidates, the challengers against Jim Kenney, brought that up over and over and over again. But I'm always a true believer, David, that people care about pocketbook issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
They care about things that impact their life. What's my pothole? What's the safety of my kids? What's going on in my schools? That's something that they care about every day. John Doherty is an important story. I'm not saying that having a major labor union leader accused of corruption is a thing that should not be taken. But to the ordinary person who's living at 3rd and Shunk or 52nd and Market Street, that's not their daily reality.
Yeah.
Like if I'm living at a neighborhood where violence is rampant or I don't have a job, I'm not really worried about an indictment of a union leader whose name I probably can't pronounce and wouldn't know if I stepped on him on the street.
Yeah. So
It's good for us. Inside baseball. It's good for us people. It's good for us.
Let's fast forward a week or two out from this election. We know some things about how the campaigns have played out. Obviously, the different dynamics of incumbents and challengers.
Right.
We don't know the results because we won't know until later this evening. But what's your guess? If we look back a couple weeks from now, what's sort of the story of this election?
Oh gosh. Yeah,
Well,
now you're asking me the crystal ball.
There's the basic thing is sort of more of the same business as usual, or
I don't think it's going to be business as usual. I don't think there's going to be business
going
as
on
usual.
out there.
No, I don't think there's business as usual. I think that we will definitely have at least 2 new members of City Council.
We have to.
We have to. Right, we have to.
There's 2 open seats.
Right, there's 2 open seats. I think we might have different members of council because we know there's 2 for the Democrats, right, at large. There's no guarantee that the 2 current Republican members at large may win election in November.
Right.
You know that there are some independents who are thinking of running
That
in
would
November.
be a fascinating story.
So that could possibly change things, depending upon who is sitting in City Council at large. That could determine who the council president is in 2020, who the majority leader is. So that could be interesting. We have, if you listen to my City Council show, I interview the council people every week, and there's talk about a change to the 10-year tax abatement, which I think might happen in the upcoming budget. Now, I don't know if it's going to be the elimination of the 10-year tax abatement, or if they might say, okay, the 10-year tax abatement is only going to be a 6-year deal or an 8-year deal. But I think
qualifications or caps
right.
or something.
But I think there's going to be changes that way. Council is talking about really dealing with the issue of poverty and investing in poverty programs. I think we're going to have a ballot question that passes today that Council President Darrell Clark wants with those traffic enforcement officers.
Yeah.
So you might see traffic enforcement officers in the next couple of months. And I think it all leads to 2020, which is the sexy election.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be involved in the sexy election.
Well, maybe for another conversation, but I don't know that there's been a time in this country's history when national politics have so influenced local politics.
Right.
And I'm of the camp that says that's not such a good thing because we might have 60-some% turnout for presidential elections and we might have 20-something% turnout for these races, which I would argue make more difference to people's lives.
I always say that as well.
Well,
I think the thing I like to say to people, if you had to come up with a hashtag for elections, hashtags all elections matter. And hashtag local elections matter. They really matter. And I understand the excitement of a presidential election. I've covered them. I've been to conventions. They're exciting. Lots of hoopla. You see television all the time. You see everything. But you know what? There's a greater likelihood on a daily basis that somebody watching this live stream, if you have somebody that goes to court, you're going to be impacted by a judge. There's probably going to be a decision of a mayor that's going to impact you on a day-to-day.
You're telling me that I may be less affected by Donald Trump's tweets than something here in City Hall?
I believe that. I would believe that. Right. You should pay attention to Jim Kenney's tweets and what that means to you than Donald Trump. And I get, but it kind of all trickles downhill. And I really think that local issues impact people daily. Like what the city's doing to reduce crime and violence impacts you on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And those are the reasons I tell people,
question.
local elections super matter. What is it that Tip O'Neill?
All
Politics is local, and that's all it is.
Let me ask you the last question. I always like to, people who are really interested and engaged in politics,
Right.
I'm curious, did your parents or others take you to polls when
Yes.
you were a kid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
How young?
Oh, I was really young.
Yeah.
I was really young. I was a kid.
I saw a 6-month-old. I was at the polls at 7:15 this morning.
That's a great.
I saw a 6-month-old.
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
Good for you.
That is awesome. I mean, I think probably the youngest I remember, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And we
It's
would walk.
magical, isn't it? It's like going to church.
Yeah,
It's like,
you know what I remember the most, and I still remember this every day. It's just that feeling of going through the curtains, right, and just knowing that these buttons and they're lighting, and in a couple of minutes I can have a role. I was fascinated as a kid, and I remember I think my mom, it was my mom I think, lifted me up. And let me push a button, and then put me down. And I was still like kind of fascinated by just the whole thing. And I've taken my kids there. So my sons, who are 27 and 24, they go vote. Now they're like millennials, so they don't vote as often as I can. But I am proud to say that my sons voted for me when I was running for committee person in Southfield.
Okay.
So their first election, their dad was on the ballot. And my daughter, who is now 9, when we get together, I'm going to take her to polling places too. It's fascinating.
My older daughter got married last August to a guy who is running for Chester County Commissioner today.
Oh, well,
so,
well, there you go.
We got a little
I hope that he wins.
Family thing.
I hope that he wins.
I'm trying to be.
I thought you were going to say he got. Wait a minute. I thought you were going to say like we got married in a like in a voting booth or there was a voting. I was waiting for. I was waiting for that kind of dramatic thing.
Blair's a super voter, but yeah. So
that is a super duper. Well, she's a super voter.
Yeah.
If she's voting and then her spouse is running for office, that's a super duper.
She is knocking doors or handing out lit even as we speak.
But I'm like you. I believe that it's important to enhance. That issue.
Yeah, so that's always my encouragement. You got, a couple hours, 2.5 hours still to vote. If you got young kids, or just grab the neighbor's kids, take them to the polls.
Well, legally, ask the people, ask the neighbor's kids if you can take them. Because if you take a neighbor's kids, that's David Thornburgh's issue. Don't call me.
You got a problem.
Don't call me.
Okay.
Blame David Thornburgh.
Good point. Vincent, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure you'll be a busy man making the rounds this evening.
And if people want to follow me, you can always follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is MediaMancom, MediaMancom. And if you're like, oh man, this guy's talking about politics, I try to make it really simple on the City Council show. Every week, David is a listener.
Yep, he does a good job.
10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I try to make it super simple. I ask them all the hard questions. And if you don't get a chance when we're live from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. every Thursday, we rebroadcast it every Thursday from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. So we're trying to give you your 3 hours of City Council. Last week, I was actually there for 5.5 hours because they took a break in the middle of the session that you did not know about. So. When it's really a professional when you have to fill an hour that you not know that you're going to have to fill when you started the show.
Good for you. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Folks, thank you for joining us, and get out and vote if you haven't already.